Now that we looked at the basic text formatting, let's move on to row and column formatting. We're going to look at how to change the row height, the column width, some of the color fill in the background of the rows, and things like the alignment as well. So all these cool tools we're going to learn in this next video. So let's start with column width and row height. There's three ways you can change both the column width and the row height. The manual way to do it is you put your cursor between any two columns or rows. So for example here I'm between the A and the B, and I can click and drag with my mouse, and I can set that manually, right? So I can go thinner or I can go wider, either way. I can do that with rows too. I can put it between any two rows, click and drag it up or down, and that sets the height of the row. Now the other way you can do this is simply you can go in there and actually set manually the exact number that you want the width or the height of the column or row. And as long as I have that column selected, right, so or row selected, so here I've got A selected, I can go up to my format on the home tab up on the ribbon and go down to column width or row height, and when I click on that, that gives me a number. I don't really know what unit this number is representing, but I do know it affects the width and the height of the column or the row. So if I make this bigger, this will make the column wider. Similarly with rows. So let's see what happens when I type in a 15.75. That makes it a little bit bigger or a little bit wider. However, the tool I like to use most is I simply just put my cursor between two columns or two rows and I double click. And this will do an auto fit for the columns, and it will adjust each column or row and make it fit depending on the size of the data and the values in the column or the rows. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for columns B, C, D, E, and F. I'll leave, well, I'll do it for G and H too. Okay. However, I noticed that maybe these columns are a little bit on top of each other now, so if I go C to F, I'm going to highlight these. I can also get to that cell width value that I looked at up here in the formatting icon in the ribbon. I can simply right click any column as well and go down to column width, and I can set it this way as well. So instead of 529, maybe I'll bump this up to maybe let's try 7.5. So that looks a little bit nicer, spreads things out a bit more. I'm also going to make column A a little bit more narrow, so it's not going across and give me too much room here. Okay, so that looks good. So that's your column width and your row height. Let's focus on color next. So color will help kind of bring out your data a little bit more. It distinguishes certain data. It can maybe maybe make things stand out and make them look a little bit more important than other sets of data. It also allows you to kind of visually differentiate some data from the rest of your spreadsheet. So let's do that with, let's say, maybe B6 to H6, my headers here. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I'm going to give this my fill color up here. I'm going to give this maybe a, let's do maybe a light green. I'll go with this shade of green up here. And you know, in fact, I like this. Let's go all the way from, actually, let's start with B7 and go down to H11, and I'll give this an even lighter shade of green. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty nice. So that's your fill color. Again, it's important to make sure you have the right area selected, and your paint bucket icon up here will allow you to fill the background of those cells. Now let's talk about alignment next. Alignment is really going to help make your spreadsheet all the more professional looking. It's going to line things up nicely, and you're not going to have these different parts of your data lining up to random areas throughout your spreadsheet. So I'm going to start up with what's called a merge and center tool with my top row up here. So you'll notice I have my title in A1, but it's all the way over to the left. And you'll also notice that it spreads across some of the other cells up here. So what I want to do with merge and center is essentially take this title and merge it across from columns A to H. Not only that, but also stick it right in the center. So even if I select cell D1 or F1, any data I put in there is not going to overlap what I have in my title in A1. So I'm going to select A1 and all the way across to H1. And I want to merge and center the text across all of these cells. So I'm going to go up to my alignment group in my home tab, and I'll click this merge and center button. So what this essentially does is it takes all the cells that I selected and it merges them into one larger cell that occupies that entire selected area. So no longer is there a B1 or a C1 or an F1. This is all considered one cell now up here, and it merges and it centers all the text in those cells in the middle here. So even if I were to go up to my name box and try to type in C1 and I hit enter, it's still going to take me to this area up here that my title occupies. So merge and center can become very useful. Another area I might be able to do that with that would look nice is probably the subtitle here. From A2, I'm going to go to H2. I'll merge and center that as well. So now that's looking a lot nicer. Let's look at some other alignment options I have that are also in the same area that that merge and center tool was, the alignment group up here in my ribbon. This controls the positioning of your data within the cell. So whether it's lining up to the left side of the cell, the right, the top, or the bottom, all that can be controlled with these 6 icons in my alignment group. So let me show you how we can change that with maybe some of the data here in my headers. I'm going to go from B6 to H6. I want to make sure this is centered. And you'll see it kind of makes sure the data is in the center of those cells. I'm also going to put, let's see, maybe G4. Maybe I want this right aligned, so I'm going to click my right alignment here. And let's see, what else could I do? Maybe I'll put my A4, I'll left align that. Okay, so now my data is starting to look a little bit nicer, and I think I'm going to do the same to my values, my numerical values in the beneath my headers here. I'm going to put those in the center. So things are starting to look a lot more nicely organized. We'll address the southern region after we get done with the northern region. Okay, finally, let's talk about borders. Borders are again another tool that you can use to visually distinguish certain data from the rest of your spreadsheet. This will also give it a nice, more organized look to your spreadsheet as well. I'm going to start with my headers from A6 to H6. The first step is you're going to want to select the range that you want to apply these borders to, and your tool is right here in the font group. It's this perforated box looking thing, and I can click on the drop down and choose from one of the built-in borders. So let's say let's do just that. I'm going to go down and maybe choose a thick bottom border, and you'll notice now when I deselect that area, it applies that, similar to like an underline tool, but it goes across all the cells I selected. So I've got a nice thick underline from A6 to H6. Now I'm going to go down to A10 to H10. Maybe I want a nice kind of perforated line that separates my totals from the employees. So I'm going to go back up to my borders tool here, and I'm going to actually change my line style. So I'm going to go down here to my menu and choose this, let's choose this perforated line. You'll notice now I'm given a pencil, and this is great because I can now just draw in the border by clicking and dragging with my mouse across where I want that border to be applied. And after I've drawn it, I can then just hit escape on my keyboard, and when I deselect that area, you'll notice I have a nice perforated border that separates my totals from my employees. Okay, so that can also be accomplished if I go back to my borders tool. I can go to draw border, and that will give me back my pen that I can just click and drag and actually draw wherever I need those borders to be applied to. Okay, and I didn't want them applied there, so I'm just going to undo that. Good. So what else? Let me show you how we can apply a border in a slightly different way. Let's say maybe I want to apply a border to this date in A4. I'm going to go up to my dialog box launcher in the font group. I'll click on that, and remember that gives me access to some of the other tools, other formatting tools. I'm going to go into my border tab this time. I can choose my line style like I did before. Maybe I want a slightly thicker border. I then have to choose the location of the border. So if I want it above, in the middle, underneath, diagonally across, and I'll just do it underneath. Okay, you'll get a nice preview here in this box, and then when I hit OK and I deselect, I'll be able to see that border underneath the date. Let's say maybe I had second thoughts and I didn't want that border underneath the date. I can go into, again, A4, select it. I'll go back up to my borders icon, and I can choose a number of different ways to get rid of that border. I can, the first way is to click on no border here. I can also click on erase border, which is going to give me a very similar tool to that draw border, but instead of a pencil, I get an eraser, and I can click and drag on whatever borders I want to erase them. And then when I want to deselect that eraser tool, I just hit escape, and I'm back to my normal cursor where I can go ahead and select some other areas and apply formatting to them.